Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. So behind me is the house where Agatha Christie lived much of her adult life. Agatha Christie is renowned as the most popular novelist of all time, having sold over 2 billion copies of her works. So she published, I think it's 66 detective novels, 14 collections of short stories, and a few more novels she wrote under a nom de plume. So she was born in 1890 into a wealthy family in Torquay. Her mother was born in Ireland, so I can claim, therefore, Agatha Christie's half Irish, she's Irish too, but it's not a very strong claim, because her mother was born to English parents in Ireland, but never mind, she's kind of Irish. She had a number of much older siblings. She was born to quite elderly parents, and she didn't hardly grew up with her sisters and brothers, and they'd been to school, but her parents insisted on keeping her at home. They would educate her themselves. So her mother thought Agatha Christie was slow. In fact, that Agatha was hyperlexic. Obviously, Christie wasn't her maiden name, and so she simply devoured novels in particular. And she was keen on acting. She was able to appear in some amateur dramatics as a child. And the family, they travelled extensively when that was very unusual. So she went around France a lot, went to the Channel Isles, particularly Guernsey, as a teenager. They even travelled to Egypt, and they visited some of the ancient ruins there. So she developed a lifelong fascination with Egyptology, and that's why it's the locale for some of her stories and things like Murder on the Orient Express. She was bitten by the travel bug early and never lost it. She adored sunshine. This country was a bit too cold for her, so she's quite often going on holiday. Anyway, the First World War broke out, and she married a guy called Archie, who was in the Royal Flying Corps, as in that turned into the Royal Air Force, and she married him just a few months after meeting him. It was quite common, these quick wartime marriages. You could be killed any day. We have to grow up fast. We can't be messing around. They had one daughter, Rosalind. So the marriage was all right at first. She did her bit for the war, working in University College Hospital, and she acquired a knowledge of pharmacy. So that's why poisons feature in her murder mysteries quite a lot. Miss Marple is one of her best-known fictional creations. Now, Miss Marple is a bit of a jinx, this elderly spinster. If you invite her to stay, someone's definitely going to get murdered. You think people would stop inviting her if someone always gets killed when she's around. And then Hercule Poirot, the francophone Belgian detective, who's a bit on the tubby side, famously portrayed by Peter Ustinov, Sir Peter Ustinov, and then David Suchet in the 90s. Her plots, well, they're quite varied. There's pace, there's certainly a lot of action, not too demanding of the reader, but people have complained that some anti-Semitic Jewish characters have supposedly stereotypically ugly looks, and Dagos, she's not crude enough to use that word, but she seems to be prejudiced against anybody from the Mediterranean or anybody who's not white. They're always the baddies, they're never the good guys. And she had indeed been on the Orient Express, by the way. So by the early 1920s, she was world famous. Her novels were selling very, very well. She wasn't exactly reclusive, but she didn't seek out publicity. But her marriage was breaking down. Her husband had fallen in love with someone else. He requested a divorce. He eventually got it. It was quite a lengthy and expensive process, considered deeply shameful for both parties, both the sinned against and the sinning. So he eventually married this other one. I can't remember her married name. She was married herself, so she was also having an extramarital affair. She got divorced too. But there was this curious episode in 1926 when Agatha Christie vanished and nobody knew where she's gone. And it was a sensation. It was all over the newspapers. Was she dead? Had she been kidnapped? But she'd just gone incognito, checked into a hotel under the name of her husband's mistress's husband, if you see what I mean, and claiming to have come from Cape Town, and she was eventually found. Did she know what she was doing? Was she temporarily mentally ill? People think that she's sort of taken leave of her senses, lost her memory for a while, was in a fugue or something like that. There's a film about it, in fact. But anyway, she got back on an even keel. I don't think she ever married again, and was well known in this country and the United States, travelled extensively, including to Syria. In the First World War was working at in the Second World War was working at University College Hospital. So she was very wealthy. She bought a large house in the Oxfordshire countryside, and towards the end of her life, they were already making these her novels into TV shows. And The Mousetrap, a play of her work, was put on at the West End in 1952, and it was still running till coronavirus struck. The longest running play in the world, 68 years, an uninterrupted run. So she died in 1976. I can't remember where she's buried actually. So that is just a little bit about Agatha Christie. It's a kind of too bright. You're not actually seeing the house very well. I'm not sure if I go closer. The Green Lodge. We're on Sheffield. Is it Sheffield Terrace? This street? Sheffield something or other. We're in the Holland Park area, which is a super expensive area. There is actually a park of Holland Park, which is that away, not too far. Okay, I'll switch it off now. Toodle pip.